Shalom, beloved, and hopefully everyone is doing wonderful today. Now, this subject that I'm going to address today is seems to be like a touchy subject in Israel, right? A sore subject. It can almost be a stumbling block for certain people. And that's biblical marriage from a polygamous standpoint. Now, I'm not an expert on said subject, but I like to do research. There's a lot of good brothers, a lot of good sisters out there that are putting out good information out there. Again, let's be real about it. There are some brothers and maybe some sisters out there as well that have ill intent and maybe have things that they are doing within said community that's not of the Most High. Let's just be honest about it. But the thing that really gets to me also is the people that are against it typically are the loudest ones. And I say that because they not only are the loudest ones typically, but they come up with these bad doctrines. Instead of putting out the right information or sound doctrine and just say, hey, it's not for me. Because remember, it's not a requirement. It's not a prerequisite in Israel. It's not. You're not required to practice biblical marriage from a polygamous standpoint. It's not, mandatory. But to come up with all these doctrines, man, all these different ideologies, man, is just as bad as the people that are, again, promoting it, but they have nefarious reasons, right? I mean, just to listen to all these doctrines, well, in the beginning, it was just Adam and Eve, not Adam and, 4 or 5 other women. And that may be true, but that still doesn't negate that the Most High gave laws to regulate. And also, there was different scenarios and situations that Israel were put into where it was actually promoted. And we'll probably touch on that as well. Or it's not the Most High's perfect will, but his permissive will. I mean, what scripture is that? I mean, what book, what chapter? You had to be rich when, again, the forefather, Jacob, he wasn't rich. He worked for his wives, right? King David was a whore. I mean, when the Most High never said that. King David was a man after the Most High's own heart, and he was judged for his iniquity of sleeping with another man's wife, right? At least David was honest. Again, this is what I'm saying. These people are not honest, but they claim to be Israelites, right? When we should be seeking truth, not our opinion, not our feelings. Not in our captivity. When Israel became a nation in their captivity. Here's another one. All the drama that went on in those marriages, in those biblical marriages, right, from a polygamous standpoint. But what about all the drama from the monogamous marriages, right? Adam and Eve, the first murder. Remember, there was also exile out of the garden. What about Ahab and Jezebel? Again, killing all the prophets. I mean, there's so many examples to show that these people who come up with these bad doctrines, man, again, this is why I say it's reckless. They are just as bad as the people who believe in it, but have ill intent, right? Have an ulterior motive. Not for the good of Israel, but for these guys, for their own lustful ways. Right? Again, here's one I've even heard some sisters. I mean, it's amazing to hear women say this. Well, if the men can do it, we can do it. I mean, go do you, baby. When again, there shall not be a whore amongst the daughters of Zion. Because again, you can take a man, you can take one man, and he can impregnate multiple women to build a nation quicker. When if you take one woman and you give her 5 husbands, she's going to produce at best, right, 1 child a year. And besides that, who's the baby daddy? And let me not forget about the men that even have that mindset. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh yeah, these guys come up with this these different doctrines. But let's be real about it. Our forefathers married women that were virgins, right? They married women that were virgins. So did you marry your wife when you married your wife? Well, she's a virgin. Probably not. But again, if we go to the letter of the law, again, a lot of Israel will be put to shame. But this is the things that I say that's really crazy, because we should be seeking truth. We should be seeking truth, not our feelings, not our opinions. In fact, dealing with the law aspect of it, right? Not only the Most High regulated, where a man, if he was to take on another wife, the first wife, she would not lose her, the things that he was supposed to provide for: clothing, shelter, protection, and so on and so forth. Right? Again, there's other situations where, again, why the Most High made this lawful, because remember, Israel was a war nation, and if there was a war and a man went out and he went to war and he was married, but he didn't have an heir, his brethren, his kinsmen, right? Even if they had a wife, in many aspects, he was not only obligated, but it was promoted, right, for him to marry his deceased comrade's wife and dedicate an heir in honor of him. What about if your wife is barren? He can take on a wife or have a concubine and have an heir that he can be able to give his substance to. Again, it's not hard, but all these people will say, well, in the land of your captivity, you're supposed to follow the laws and the customs. Well, not necessarily the customs, but the laws of the land. But the laws go into their customs, right? When the fact of the matter is, Israel never did that. They practiced their culture, their customs, even to death. But if you're cool with following the laws of the land, and again, and I'm not promoting you go out there and break laws and stuff like that and do anything that's criminal, not at all. But if you're going to stand on the laws of the land, you should be perfectly fine with homosexuality and gay marriage. You should be fine with that. In fact, you should be fine being categorized as slaves, because remember, these same people that you're talking about or you're in captivity to, they had laws and legislation to legally, in their eyesight, categorize you as slaves, chattel property. Let that sink in. But again, it's crazy to have these conversations, or you see videos, or people come up with these bad doctrines, man, instead of just letting the books say what the books say. And again, if you're against it, and your opinion or your reasoning is because that's just the way you feel, and it has nothing to do with, hey, well, it's not for me, but here is the actual truth, here is the actual scriptures that support it, but as for me, I'm not going to practice it, then something is wrong with you. Because again, it was never mandatory in Israel. You didn't have to practice it, but there are people out there that want to be a part of said community, because whether there's a shortage of honorable men and men who are of substance and honorable and righteous, or what have you. But there's many different scenarios that are out there to validate. In fact, the Most High himself, he actually classified Israel and Judah as his bride, as his wives. Hamashiach, in the parable of the 10 virgins, and him also marrying the 7 churches. why would they be against it, but yet give you scenarios or scriptures or, parables that actually show support? It just would not make any sense. But again, like I said, it's usually the people that are more vocal or the loudest who are against it and not putting out information that is, again, truthful. And that's why I say they're just as bad, in many cases worse than the people who promote it, but they have ill intent. Because again, you can't lie on the Most High and then think you're righteous. Let that sink in. With that being said, as usual, peace, love. Shalom.